call us to order. So quick roll call. Bill?
Here.
All right, Matt?
Here.
Kevin?
Here.
Jim?
Here.
And myself here. So thank you, everyone. And appreciate Susan Ald, our clerk, and Aaron Kokinda from the town are participating tonight, as always. And the second item, order of business, is approval of the minutes. And is there a motion? Do we? I'm a little mixed up, given some of my emails got jumbled, but do we have the minutes?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
did we receive a copy of the
that's
meeting minutes from the last meeting? I don't know if I have a copy of, or have record of receiving a copy of the July 9th.
January 9th. Yeah.
Or January 9th.
Yeah. So we'll table that and get to it at the next meeting. So terrific. So the third item on our list is a real quick update on subdivision rules and regulations, and I will make an apology to the group. I've been trying to get some information about paper streets with very little effort on my part, and that so the results show. And I did review Wilmington's rules and regs, and I thought in general they were pretty consistent with ours. Different form and maybe a little more holistic in terms of sort of overall presentation, and then outlining approvals and things like that, but not very different in content. So I will schedule a hard binding time with town engineer Bill Renault and commit to having a discussion about this in our March meetings, and hopefully finalizing it by the end of March, and that we can put that to rest. Our next item is, and I don't know if anybody has any other comments or questions about the subdivision rules and regs. So, okay. Our fourth item of business is to begin our discussion of the preliminary subdivision plan for 154 and 158 Salem Street. And just to level set things, I think, as we all know, the preliminary plan is really to enable the applicant and the planning board and other town agencies to discuss and clarify the subdivision plan before the definitive plan is prepared. We did receive these plans, and before we get into any substance, I do want to ask the applicant about their overall intentions and schedule. Are you expecting to submit a full preliminary plan and expect the planning board to be taking a vote, or is this really I think wanting to get the conversation started and help troubleshoot a little bit, and then come back? And I would like to talk a little bit about timing and scheduling, because we have a lot before us for February and early March. So with that,
yeah,
Mr.
we're joined
McGrail?
by Attorney McGrail, who's
Yeah.
the one I've been in correspondence with here, and he can kind of fill us in here.
That would be helpful.
To go on what Theo was saying, I received these plans last week. I forwarded them to you guys. I have hard copies. Attorney McGrail, I know, in the past we've seen a preliminary, they've submitted it, and we talked about it that night. If you'd like to review it at a future meeting, we can set it for a future date as well. So the floor is yours.
Yeah.
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Great. For the record, Attorney Brian McGrail. On behalf of the applicants, there's actually two applicants on the preliminary subdivision plan because there's two properties involved, 154 and 158 Salem Street. L&L Development is the owner of 154 Salem Street. Wakefield Salem Street LLC owns 158 Salem Street. Nick Leo and Rocco Leo, they are they're representing both entities. So the entities that own these properties are related entities. And both of the owner representatives are here tonight on the Zoom. Also with us tonight is Rich Williams of Williams and Sparagus. Rich is our site civil engineer on this potential development. I guess to start off, to answer your intentions, it is a preliminary, answer your question on our intentions. It is a preliminary plan, and just as you said, Mr. Chair, our goal is to get feedback from the board before we go to the expense of designing a full-blown definitive plan with all the drainage studies and all the bells and whistles that have to go with that, because there's some discussions that could be fruitful with the board on what the board's desires are, preferences, so we know how to move forward. As far as timing goes, I think you're aware that the preliminary plan process is supposedly a 45-day process. It's non-binding, so we really want feedback. When I've done these in the past, historically, the planning board sometimes has given a decision, an approval, which is not binding. It really doesn't carry any precedence. Sometimes they've just given feedback. I think really they've denied it, but I think you have denied. So it's really, that's a discussion we can have as we go along, but our true goal is to get feedback on this that would lead to a definitive plan. So we anticipate we could come back again to another hearing. We'd like to have, a base discussion with you tonight to kind of familiarize you with what it's all about. So you can consider it, and then maybe you want some input from, the town engineer or other people too, as part of the discussion. So the 45 days, again, if you miss that date, there's no repercussions, but we're certainly not looking to put pressure on the board, and we're happy to extend that to the extent we can to facilitate a robust discussion with your board to get the feedback that we need, because that feedback only benefits my clients and saves them time, money, and resources moving forward with a definitive plan.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
With that said, if I may, I'd like to have
Before we jump into that, I mean, we I'm not sure we have or will have sufficient time at our February meetings. So that's why sort of if we really wanted if you would like us to start really considering this, I mean that would mean March 12th or scheduling another meeting sort of somewhere in between. So that's sort of where we're at. I mean, so we'll look at the agendas for February too, but that's sort of my initial thinking. And I don't know, Aaron, if you have any schedule.
I mean, I think we hear what they have to say tonight or
Yep.
show us tonight. We can decide if it furthers discussion. I think we can find time. I know we have our MBTA communities for public hearings. Probably that will be set for the February meetings. But, in the past, I have reached out to our town engineer, Bill Renaud. He knows this, this project. He's reviewing it and we'll be able to provide some feedback. But I think for the sake of time, Brian, if you're prepared to show the board, what you guys are thinking as well, and kind of give us, and we can decide if it makes sense for you to come back and answer any questions that weren't answered tonight too, and give the feedback from the town engineer as well, initial feedback.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. And we're happy to work with the board schedule, however that works out. So with that said, if I may, Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask
Please.
Rich Williams Rich, do you want to share your screen with the plan if you could? And I can do an initial kind of little discussion here, and I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about the details. Great. Can you go
Can
to
you see that?
Yeah, can you go to the next sheet for me, Rich, and then you can come back and maybe shrink it down a little bit because it's kind of too close in.
Yeah.
Go to the plotting sheet where we show the lots and the dimensions for me.
Yep, 1 second.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good. So, basically, and maybe go to the sheet before, Rich. Yeah, that's good. So blow that up a little bit. Perfect. So just to kind of, Rich will get into more detail, but what our land that comprises 154 and 158 Salem Street is shown as lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 in Road A on this plan. What jumps out at you, obviously, is we've got a unique split zone property. When you look at both of these, we've got some property in the general residence district. We've got some property in the single residence district. And then lot 3 is primarily in the industrial district. So because that kind of gets the tail end of, if you follow down, that kind of connects down near New Salem Street. So really unique property from that perspective. What the subdivision is proposing is a 4-lot subdivision. Lot 1, you see, is that lot 1 is a portion of 158 that has a legal non-conforming 2-family dwelling on it. What we're thinking on that property, just so the board knows, because we do want to let you know what we're thinking here, because I think that might have some impact on your thoughts on the roadway and what you might be looking to do in the roadway as far as, sidewalks, et cetera, as we get into the discussion. But, so what we're anticipating is lot 1, we would either raise that 2-family and rebuild it as a legal non-conforming 2, or we would do some renovations to it. So that's our thought there. Lot 4 would either have, that's partially in the general residence district, so that would have either a single residence or a 2-family dwelling. Lot 2 would have a single family home abutting the Road A. And uniqueness is this industrial piece, because conventional housing is not allowed in the industrial district, only multifamily is. We've contemplated doing an industrial use here, maybe, an industrial type building. We don't think it really goes here, because this is kind of the way this was zoned. It was picked up on the tail end of New Salem Street, but has its access off of Salem Street, which is primarily a residential area. So what we're thinking here is a multifamily use, which is allowed in the industrial district. That after the subdivision will require a special permit process with the Board of Appeals or under the bylaw. But what we're thinking here is not, when I say multifamily, not a garden type building or a mid-rise building, like you're seeing on Foundry Street or North Ave, not that type of building. What we're thinking here is townhouses. We think it would be more appropriate for this setting, because it's set pretty far back. They will be low. You wouldn't see them from anywhere. They would be hidden back there. It would be a number that would be 20 or less, so not a huge number. In talking to our marketing people, there's a real demand for this type of housing, and there's not a lot of it in Wakefield. So we think something like that would fit really well back here and would be a good use for this piece of property, and would have, virtually no visual impact, and very low impact as far as traffic goes. But that would all come at a later date with traffic studies. And again, not a huge number. It would be maximum of 20 and probably less than that at the end of the day. So we think it's important that you know what we're thinking about back there, because if we don't tell you what we're thinking about at this point, it makes it difficult to kind of evaluate the roadway and what's happening with that. So I just kind of wanted to set the table, and then Rich, maybe you can go into a little bit more detail on other aspects of the preliminary plan. And Rich, maybe you can also touch on to start where we are with the Conservation Commission on this property.
Sure. I'm going to start by zooming out a little bit here.
And let me just add, when I say, when I say a townhouse project, it would still have an affordable component. So 18% of those would be affordable, the way the bylaw works. Just because it's townhouse doesn't mean it doesn't have that inclusionary zoning aspect. Sorry to interrupt, Rich.
No problem. So just to orient folks, this line here is 158 Salem. The remainder of the property is 154 Salem. And it's abutted on this side by a residential structure, and on this side by 2 residential structures. And this is a commercial structure that is accessed from Nablus Way, and right here is the railroad. All of the properties across Salem Street are residential, mostly single-family residentials. Bear with me for a second. I'm gonna go to the topographic plan here, just so we can see some of the grades. This Salem Street is approximately elevation 172 or so. Sorry, elevation 72 to 74, where it comes off, where we propose to enter Salem Street. The majority of the back section of the property is about elevation 63. It's pretty flat, but varies a little bit. So there's about 10 feet of grade from Salem Street out to the back. And there is a wetland system that is at the rear of the property and along the side over here. And as Brian said, we have gone to the Conservation Commission and have an affirmation of that line through the ANRAD process. So that line is set. Also at the back of the property is a flood zone. The flood zone is, for the most part, contained within the wetland system, so it doesn't come out beyond the wetlands and into the property. Also, there is a sewer main, and that sewer main is contained within a sewer easement, and it comes down through Nablus Way and through the property, our abutter's property, and through the back of our property right about here. So lot 3 does have a sewer easement that goes through it. That's a town of Wakefield easement for a sewer main. As Brian said, we are proposing a road to provide frontage for 4 lots. This is lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, and lot 4. The proposed road is 275 feet long. And that 275 feet takes you all the way from the start all the way to the end of the circle. The middle of the circle is about 220 feet. I'm going to zoom up so we can see the location of this existing dwelling. See a little better when I zoom up. This is the dwelling. It's right on the property line. As Brian said, there are a few options for that, either to take it down or modify it so that it meets zoning on the lot 1 to lot line. The road that's proposed is what we're showing is a 40-foot right of way, and we are aware that a 40-foot right of way requires a waiver. We do believe that the width is adequate to support what we are proposing. The subdivision regulations require 50 feet with 26 feet of pavement. That we have shown here 40 feet with 24 feet of pavement. We do have sidewalks on both sides with a 2.5-foot grass strip shown adjacent to the or between the sidewalk and the pavement. Our water would be taken from the main in Salem Street. That's from the town's records, it's a 6-inch main. We would propose a water main coming down the street and a hydrant at the end. The sewer would be captured in the road and discharged through a new sewer easement and connect to the sewer main that exists on the property. That would allow us to do the project with the gravity sewer rather than a pump sewer. And our proposed drainage system is what we've shown here is conventional catch basins, piped to a collection system, and then a stormwater management area, which obviously that hasn't been designed. It's approximately how big we think a pond would be out there, but detailed drainage calculations and design would have to happen as part of a full design of the structures and the building and the roadway. And I think that's it, Brian, for me.
Yeah, that's fine, Rich. Thank you. Rich, it just, to touch on this, I mean, we're proposing a 40-foot right of way. Geometrically, we could do a 50-foot if we had to, right? Without any changes to the
That's
lots.
correct. If we did a 50-foot right of way, most likely the 10 feet would eat into 1 and 2, and these lots would change shape enough to still meet zoning.
So we're happy to answer any questions at this point or take any comments that the board might have, Mr. Chair.
Sure. I'll open it up to all the board members. Yeah, Bill.
Mr. Chair, yes. Thank you, Attorney McGrail, and thank you for the presentation. Rich, I think looking at so Conservation Commission, thinking about the Mill River floodplain, that all goes into. I know this is a complicated site. Obviously, there's not a lot of slope on it, but as far as trees and thinking about what will be removed, I know it helps us to see trees on a site just to understand how many would be removed from this, which would cause more runoff and water. So has the site been reviewed for what trees stand and what trees will be removed? In any case, I don't know if that's jumping ahead too far, but I just wanted to bring that question up.
We have not evaluated it from that standpoint. Of course, in our drainage analysis, we consider all that, the change from the existing condition to the proposed condition, but there is a fair amount of vegetation back there, which we would have to account for the removal of.
Right. I didn't get a chance to go by, but I was looking on Google Earth just to see, our Google Maps, just to see how much. It's really hard to tell. And I know you're in, but it's looking at Salem from the property to the left is industrial, correct?
That's correct.
On Nablus, okay. But on the right, there's residential.
That's correct. This is
Okay.
this is the aerial. Can you guys see that?
Not yet. Yeah, I gotta stop
No.
share again, Rich.
And the reason I'm bringing that up too, it slopes from 72 to 73 to the back, but does it also slope down more into the single residential zoning area?
I'm going to take one thing at a time here. Can you see?
Yes.
Can you see that
Yep,
aerial?
Yep.
So this is us back here. This is the commercial space. these are the two residential spaces, buildings, that, as you enter our roadway on the right-hand side. And
Right.
this is the lower side of the property. Let me go back to my, can you guys see that now?
No, you
Nope.
gotta up and then start again.
Yeah, you might have to stop sharing and reshare.
Yep. You guys can see that now?
Yes.
Okay, so Salem Street slopes to the northwest, which is from here towards here. This is the railroad, which is kind of the lowest area. There's a river next to the railroad, and that's the lowest part. So it does slope in this direction. And I don't know if I gave you bad information, but there's about 10 feet of grade from Salem Street to the back here.
Understood.
And maybe 8 feet or so of grade from the northeast side of lot 1 to the northwest side of lot 4.
Okay. Thanks. That's what I was looking for. If it is sloping more towards the industrial and less towards the single residential area. Okay.
And of course, in our analysis, we couldn't adversely affect anyone with our drainage. We would have to show that we weren't increasing
Mhm.
runoff to any of those properties.
Understood.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
I direct, if I can just add, I direct the butter on that side. It's actually a 4-family dwelling. It's not a single family home.
Are you talking about 138 Salem?
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may. I had a question related to the structure in lot 1, the existing structure. Is it truly over the property line as it seemed to be indicated on the plans submitted to the board?
Yeah, we believe that it is slightly over the line.
And so the question just becomes what you guys would do with that in terms of if it would be a existing non-conforming to remain or to potentially demolish and as part of this anticipated redevelopment.
Yeah, it would either be modified or it would be demolished and rebuilt.
Yeah, that building's been over the line for, I don't know how old it is, but it's a very old structure.
Gotcha. And then the other question is the circle that you're, the roadway as well with the turnaround. Are you anticipating that would become a private way, or would that be a public road accepted by the town in this proposed subdivision?
We would provide the street acceptance plan, and then that would be up to the town and your planning board recommendation and town meeting. But we would want it set up that it would be hopefully accepted as a public way at some point.
And then the other one I had is related to, there's a section of the property that looks as if it's been excluded from the coefficient of friction calculations. Is that essentially because you enter the wetlands and it becomes, I'll call, non-usable space? Thought I saw a note on one of your plans that the coefficient of friction is not actually based on the property line for lot 3.
Yeah, you're talking about the coefficient of regularity, right? Not friction.
Oh, sorry. Yes, coefficient of regularity.
Yes, because of the shape of the lot, when we created that lot, the cutting a piece off made it work, and the building inspector allowed us to show it that that it meets zoning without that piece, if you know what I mean. That's why it's excluded from those calculations.
Yeah, the other part of it too is the coefficient of regularity does not apply to industrial land. It's
Gotcha.
only residential districts.
I think the other question I would have is, Aaron sourced some meeting minutes from, I believe this specific parcel came up for had a preliminary subdivision that was submitted in the previous, and I believe actually Attorney McGrail, you might have been the attorney representing that previous project, and there were a number of comments related to the sight lines where this roadway would intersect with Salem Street. I don't know if any of those previous comments, if that, there'd been any thought in terms of some, re-looking at it in that light, since that was already in front of the board, albeit in a previous iteration.
Yeah, I mean, great point, and good pickup. So the history on that is, I think it was about 10 years ago, L&L Development owned 154 Salem Street, not 158. And at that time, we applied to the zoning board for a multifamily mid-rise apartment building on the property out back. That's what they're going to do, in some single-family housing, but it was not a planning board process. It was a special permit process at the zoning board. And at that point, we went to the traffic advisory committee, and they raised a concern that there was a tree on 158 that caused a sight distance problem for the project. So we tried to resolve that and get that resolved. We didn't get far with it. We talked to the owners of 158 at the time, and it was not something that could, that wasn't going to be readily resolved. So at that time, my clients decided to kind of to inventory the property and just not move forward. We withdrew the applications at the board. Since that time, as I've mentioned, now the Leos, to another entity, have actually bought 158. So now they're in control of that property, and we can deal with the tree issue by taking the tree down that was causing the sight distance problem.
So the anticipation is that the sight lines will be improved such that the adjoining connection between this new roadway and Salem Street could, be a safe intersection.
Rich, can you answer that?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. They were safe, except for that, the tree issue, and having that resolved will allow us to have the sight distances that are safe.
In that case, I think the other question I would have is just, where I would encourage the applicant, as you guys are continuing to develop the subdivision, is putting some care and some thought into how you would have some shielding from the abutters, at least for a day one application. Specifically where you've got the single family residential on the, I'll call it the planned north side of the page, in order to, provide some privacy screening, and also put some thought into, there's a lot of trees that are going to be cut down as part of this process, and, having some amount of plantings as part of the proposed redevelopment.
Okay.
And if I could add one more comment, Attorney McGrail, this, I'm excited to where this location is. I don't know if you're aware of this. I'm sure the property owners are, but where the old railroad bed is now part of the bike path that leads right into the center of town. So if there is a future development here with however many units, it's nice to know that they could get on their bike or roll or walk safely along the bike path right into downtown. So that's really exciting.
Yes. The other thing that's going to have to, we put sidewalks on both sides. I mean, I think one thing that's going to have to be discussed with the town, there's no sidewalks on our side of Salem Street, but there are on the other. So, I don't know, and maybe the town engineer will have some input on this. If there's a possibility to put a crosswalk in.
Yeah.
To get people to the sidewalk from this project, just as you're talking, Mr. Spalding, to get them to the other side.
Right, maybe we get the Conservation Commission to work together, and you can get like a nice nature walkway from the back of the property over to the bike path.
Does it connect directly? Does it connect directly?
No, it doesn't, but it
Yeah.
has the whole Mill River runs there and everything. And it's beautiful back there. If you've ever wandered around there, it's pretty amazing. When we were looking at the rail trail and all that. We've walked back in that area. It's like you're in the middle of the fells and some of that, in the middle of Breakheart. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
And I think Attorney McCreary, you mentioned one thing about the proposal that I think it would be worth having the conversation with the board before you guys continue to develop your plans. I'm not confident that I would. I know me personally speaking as Jim Hogan, I would be amenable if you guys came to a proposal if you could get that sidewalk. Where I'm not sure if having sidewalks on both sides of this proposed roadway. I think that there's a potential for some relief there. I feel like one side it would probably be sufficient based on the low amount of travel distance and number of properties being served. So I feel like that would be I think personally, I think that would be something that I'd be interested in if other board members would feel similarly, just so we can not have that conversation during the definitive phase. If that's something you guys are, I actually would be interested in as a cost saving measure.
Oh, yeah, we definitely would. We just put it to show we could do it, but we personally thought it made sense not to have them on both sides. And I think probably what's gonna happen is hopefully it will be able to lead to a crosswalk on Salem Street. So whichever side could lead to that crosswalk would probably be where you would want it to be.
I used to turn possibly on the street and then Wakefield today by street.
Yeah, you're free to. Can you lean in a little bit? Your audio is not
Sure, yeah.
great.
I was on the board last time this came before us, so I'm aware of this site. And yeah, one of the issues was they did not have control of that one property for the sight line. To kind of go back against what Jim just said about removing the sidewalks from one side. Normally, if this was just a 4-lot residential subdivision, I would have an issue with it, but you're talking putting 20 townhouses in the back, plus a couple of other multi-families out there, so this is a little bit different than just a normal run-of-the-mill 4-lot subdivision, so I'm not prepared yet to start waiving that until we see what actually is going to happen out there. So I caution against jumping too far ahead on that issue. We definitely need to see some kind of safe way to cross the street. I think we've all been down that street. It's been kind of a mess for the last couple of years and a little bit slow, but before that, this has been a raceway through here, which is one of the issues of why this was discussed so heavily back originally when this project came up. So I don't think Salem Street's been repaved yet, but at some point it's going to be repaved and it's going to go back to its natural condition of being a little bit too fast through there. So this is one of the issues I'm going to be looking at. Is, how are you going to get pedestrians and traffic in and out of there without causing issues? The other thing I'm concerned about is the roadway coming out in the position of the house across the street. Are you going to be having street lights or car lights headed straight into that building? So if we could get those buildings on this plan, that would definitely be helpful too. And for now, I think that's all I have.
I had a very simple question about how lots 1, 2, and 4 access Road A, or does lot 1 continue to have a driveway directly onto Salem?
I think that depends on what, I think if it's a new structure, it probably comes off Road A. But if it's redone in its location and there's some reworking, it's possible that we may want to keep the drive off Salem.
Mhm.
I know that it'd be preferable to get all the driveways onto Road A.
Yeah, okay. All right. All right. I'm always really interested and want more information about the drainage analysis. And this is a bit of an academic question on my part that we don't have to answer tonight, but we know that as storms continue to get more and more intense, and I feel like the Cornell model and other existing models don't accommodate that, or have, there's no delta to add to it to have a little more protection. And that to me is, I I would love to learn more about that. Not necessarily through you, of course, but wondering how these types of things get addressed, or any proactive forward planning on that scale. Um, um, this is for me, I think a pretty comprehensive set of questions and feedback. Any other comments from the board, Kevin or other members?
I think on the sidewalk issue, I'm with Matt. With that many townhomes accessible on Road A, I'm not sure about sidewalks on just one side. Also, I'm curious, lot 3, to put 10 to 20 townhomes on that lot, are you thinking driveway access for all of those, kind of like we typically see with a townhome?
It would be one common driveway with the buildings facing that common drive.
Gotcha. Okay, so they'd be lined up facing each other.
Yes.
We haven't got into the total design on that. We just thought it would be, it would be fitting on this site to do a project like that. Wakefield hasn't seen a townhouse project, and, I think the last one that happened was probably Evergreen Estates on Albion Street, which was like a long time ago, or potentially Heron Pond.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, Attorney McGrail, the last one we spent a lot of time on was Butler. So thinking about how much time and planning went into that, I think it was close to a year with all the different designs and understanding. And we all know that didn't happen because of the site issues, but there's a couple of smaller ones that have been tighter that have been a challenge. The one off of Albion where the pet store was, and then the one
Yes.
right behind Nick's.
You're right.
So there's been some really creative designs. I mean, you could think of Clyde Court off of Prospect as a mini version of something like this. Of course, this is a lot larger, but thinking about how the road goes in and what we have. So it would be, I'm really excited to see how this site is developed and how the architectural design comes together with townhouses and laid out. So there's a great opportunity to make this a beautiful little area. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, that good. That's good feedback and a good comparison to Clyde Court, which I'm still learning about. All right. Do we have any other feedback? If not, this is a really good start. So
From our perspective, thank you. It's a great start. It's very good feedback on a first presentation. We appreciate it. That's why we're here. We look at it as a working together, work in progress to make it as good as we can for everybody. So that's a start. And we're happy to, what I'll probably do is, Aaron, you've already given it to Bill Renault, so he has it.
I have, yes.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. So I'll touch
Yep.
base with Bill and get his thoughts on crosswalks and opportunities like that.
Sorry, Attorney McGrail, one last comment. I don't know if I missed it when you were starting your presentation, but with the 3 different zone, like areas here, are you thinking of any type of approach where you would be looking for waivers or changing a use? Because I know that's always like a difficult thing to do.
No,
Okay,
no, no, not looking to rezone it or do anything like.
yeah,
We're gonna work within the current zoning.
okay, that's good to hear, because I know we've had issues in the past with some spot zoning and changing and manipulating. It's been, as you know, we're trying to move further away from that, so thank you.
Nope.
Okay. So we'll leave it to you to follow up with the town engineer and others, and I think communicate back to us about what's next for
Mhm.
you in terms of coming back to us and sort of if you have more and anything more fleshed out in this 45-day window.
Yeah. I mean, it's up to you. I mean, we kind of hear, I don't, it's up, and we're happy to come back. I mean, what's the board's thoughts? Do you need us back? I mean, you've given us this feedback on a preliminary basis. I don't know what much more we're gonna get from you.
Right.
But, maybe, for example, we could find out more about the sidewalks, because that's why we wanted to tell you what our thought was for the whole property, so you could evaluate it that way, and sidewalks in particular, as Matt had mentioned. I thought, it would be a discussion of the board based on the uses going on here, on the importance of the sidewalks and how you wanted to lay them out. Maybe that would be a good discussion with the board once we talk to the town engineer and get their feedback on opportunities for crosswalks and stuff like that.
Can I chime in for 1 second? I think the one thing that we need to have, a solid feel for is whether the 40-foot roadway width would be accepted. Because if we're gonna develop a definitive plan, we want to do it with the right width roadway.
For drainage and stuff.
I don't know if that means coming back to the next meeting with all the information that we can get.
Can you just talk about that a little more? You said you need to get a variance for the 40-foot, but you could make a 50-foot work, but you would have to pull away a little bit from what lots again?
Lots 1 and 2 would be smaller in this direction by 10 feet.
Okay,
So the roadway would be out here, but in doing that, the lots get, the shape of them get, a little more odd. They're less square,
Okay.
so that we can pick up the area. Like we said, it works both ways, but it works better with a 40-foot layout. The lots are better shaped, and we just thought that it was somewhat unnecessary with the size of this project to have the 50-foot layout.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
if I may, I would advocate putting this on our next meeting as an agenda item, only for the fact that we did not discuss this at our last meeting to put it on. It kind of popped up in between meetings. So I don't know if abutters have had a chance to really even know this is going on. So I don't even want to start making any suggestions really before we know that people have had an opportunity to review this material, ask some questions if necessary. I know we're not required to ask or accept comments from abutters, but normally in the past we have, and we've always done that in an open process. So I want to make sure we continue to do that on this one.
Oh, for sure. I think that's certainly welcome.
so what
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
Thea, what I would recommend is, that's a good point, Matt, and we can put all this stuff online on the planning board's website, so it's for review. And then also we can kind of wait to hear back from Bill Renaud and Attorney McGrail. I know you said you'll follow up with him too. That might give us some more information, and clarify any questions before we decide or us, before you decide to how you want to move forward. So I don't see a problem with that unless you guys do. It might clarify a little more things for you guys as well that we won't be able to accomplish tonight.
Right, that's technically 3 weeks away, so, yeah, I mean, we could put it on the agenda, and if we need to postpone, we certainly could. Yeah, all right.
Again, Mr. Chair, I would advocate just putting on the agenda and
Sure.
having it that we discuss it the next meeting in case, again, one of the abutters wants to, speak on behalf, of this.
Sounds good. Okay,
That's
Okay.
great, because hopefully we can maybe have some feedback from the town engineer by that point too.
okay. Terrific. Fantastic.
So the only thing I need, Erin, is I'm gonna need the signed application back from the chair that I submitted, because I've gotta, as you know, I gotta clock that in with the town clerk.
Yep, Theo, wish I caught you today. I was on a
Yeah.
webinar. We'll touch base tomorrow to get that
And it-
signed,
and
and I'll get
it-
that to you, Attorney McGrail.
Yeah, and the digital signature is fine. Tom Mullen's fine with that. So Theo doesn't
I
have
can
to.
just scan it over, yeah,
Yeah,
or
so-
digital signature too.
Digital, or if the chair signs it and then scans it to you, you can send it to me. That's fine.
All right,
Doesn't need to be a wet signature.
okay, yeah, we can do that tomorrow for sure.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right,
Appreciate the board's initial feedback on this, and we look forward to coming back in a few weeks.
terrific. Oh, good. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you again on the 17th. Yeah, that's the right date, right? Yeah, the 13th, sorry. Excellent. All right,
Thank you all.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
So our fifth item on the agenda is to set our public hearing for the MBTA 3A communities multifamily overlay district. I think, as everyone knows, we received the town council's procedural approval on a vote of 6-0 with one abstention to proceed with formal public hearings. So, Aaron, do you want to pick up the discussion? You've got a draft announcement, and
Yeah, so if you didn't have a chance last night, Theo, Jim, and myself were in front of the town council, and we were formally, it was referred to our board. I believe in the past, Jim has shared with this group a kind of timeline working backwards from when the town meeting's going to be in the end of April. So with that being said, I think now we could set a public hearing in February, 2 of them, to leave us enough time if we do need to have a third public meeting, or at least set the first public meeting and decide from there where we'd like to go. So kind of what I'm thinking is, I've drafted the public hearing notice, just waiting to plug in dates. But I was thinking the first public hearing could be February 13th, and then could be continued to the 27th. And then I think that still buys us enough time if we need to have another one if needed, March 12th, to still get something in place. And in between those two public hearings, again, we talked about this last time, meeting with the bylaw review committee. I made it clear that it's more grammatical, and any sort of changes that stay more in line with the zoning recodification language that they're doing now, but no substantial type changes. So that's kind of where I'm at. I could send the calendar around to you guys again. But that's kind of my thought. And Jim and I have talked about this in the past with Theo as well. And Jim, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add.
I don't have anything to add, with the exception of just noting to the other members of the planning board that we will likely need to make sure that as we go through this process, that we're listening to the feedback from the community. I think we got a number of vigorous feedback from the town council that we'll just need to be able to make sure that we're able to address on a go forward basis.
Yeah. Right. We on a Counselor Danahy gave some suggestions about plantings and reviewing the buffers. Was concerned about allowing roof decks or rooftops being sort of above the 35-foot line, and would want to see that no roof decks are allowed. And yeah, more questions about the setbacks.
I think the one question I would have, and I'm not sure, Aaron, if this is something we can ask Town Council Mullen, but my understanding is that our scope for ability to make changes on the substantive, I'll say, policy or the text of the bylaw is relatively limited at this point, based on the fact that it's been referred to by the planning board to town council. And now the public hearings that we're holding are for the public to provide input on whether or not the planning board shall endorse the bylaw.
I didn't realize I was muted. So I did reach out to Tom about this last Wednesday. Just discussing any changes that may come forward with the map, any text changes in the bylaw. And, according to Mass General Law 40A, Section 5, contemplates that a zoning amendment, this is from Tom, will appear on the warrant substantially as it appears in the petition referred by the town council to the planning board. However, the planning board may in its report to town meeting recommend changes to the proposed new language. These changes may be incorporated into either the main motion or a motion to amend at town meeting. So, at town meeting, any attendee also could move to amend any sort of motion or warrant, whatever's on the warrant as well. So that's, from my understanding, how it would have to be handled, but I could follow up with him too, because I had the same question as well with Town Administrator Mayo this morning, just to clarify any of that as well. But from my understanding, whatever was referred last night is what potentially is going to be on the warrant and can be changed on the floor. And I can forward this email to everyone as well, so we're all on the same pages, but that's the way I just read it. Is that kind of how you guys understand it as well?
That's more or less how I understood it, and based on our previous conversations. So I would advocate that you do forward that, just so we can all make sure that when we're setting the public hearings, we set the table in terms of that we're not, if we have an ability to make changes in the margins, then we should clearly communicate that. And if we do not, based on the procedural steps that have been taken to date, we should just be very clear on that as it relates to the purpose of the public meetings, such that people can set their expectations in a proper manner.
Okay. All right. I was feeling a little more hopeful that we had a little more flexibility to make changes. All right. All right. So the meeting with the bylaw review committee would be Monday, the 19th of February, right?
Yes, that's what I have on my calendar as of now, and I've reached out to Chair Lieber about that as well.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from the board? And if we have time tonight, can we talk a little bit about the buffers and how they work or don't work? So, yeah, Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Jim, Erin, Theo, for presenting that last night. I know it was a difficult conversation and there's a lot of comments and feedback. I know, like moving forward, I think we still have a lot to review. I think we should talk about the buffers tonight if we can, just to be on the same page and understand the 4 feet and what our intention as a board for that 4 feet to be used, and if there are guidelines, because I know that went back and forth a lot last night. So yes, to answer your question, I would like for us to discuss that.
So just to confirm, I'm going to move forward with setting the public hearing for
Yeah.
February 13th
Sorry.
at 7:15 is when I'm going to put the time.
Yes, please.
Is that something that we need to take a vote on procedurally, or can we just agree upon that?
Let's take a vote. Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, no votes needed for that. It's procedural.
Okay.
We're putting it on the agenda for then, so. I don't, either we do it that date or we push it to another date. I don't think there's really anything that really needs to be voted on.
Okay. All right.
All right, thank you. I'll start working on all the
Okay.
other things and get those specific things to the town clerk. Thanks, and work with Susan on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. And how much time do you want to give it?
I advocate to give it 45 minutes, and then we can make an adjustment if required, unless other members of the board disagree.
I agree with that.
Okay. The public hearing rules allow each speaker to have 5 minutes of discussion on a particular topic. So all right. Got it. All right, 45 minutes it is. Can we give ourselves a little buffer and schedule 154, 158 to come back at 8:15? Like, so
I think that works.
I think that's fine. And if there's more people, we can continue the public hearing as well.
sure, right, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
We've shifted around agendas before if we needed to. If we do have something in between that's less amount of work and more procedures, we could just push them.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So maybe a buffer. Yeah, a buffer is not needed. All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
would it make sense? I know we were talking about the buffer language contained within the bylaw. If you're amenable to it, I propose that I can pull it up and we can facilitate that conversation.
Yeah, I was just looking to find my copy of the bylaw, so that'd be great.
Can people see my my screen
Yeah.
with the buffers on it?
Definitely. If you can increase the magnitude, that'd be great. Perfect.
So the
Could I make
language that
I'm sorry, could I make a suggestion? I
Yeah.
mean, we put this forward in the form it's in. We're gonna start taking public testimony. Do we want to start hearing other people's comments before we start potentially changing things? I think we may want to hear what other people say first before we start getting into this, to tell
Oh,
you the truth.
yeah. Uh,
Was it
I
more
want,
clarification than anything else? If
Yeah.
understanding if we're reading it correctly, I think, Matt, I don't think you want to propose to change anything right now.
no.
I agree. I don't think
Personally-
it was intent to change it. It was more of the discussion from last night's meeting. And one of the town council members like really pulling it apart and reading it a different way. I think as a board, we just need to understand what this means for the
Okay.
public. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Alright.
the question, the, for context, Matt, town council was asking clarification of, so we have this, the 4 feet that we're talking about from all buildings and side and rear property lines, except as may be approved by the planning board. And the question was regards to, is that redundant with the 10-foot setback, or is it inclusive of? And when it says except as may be approved by the planning board, does that mean that it's a, for lack of a better term, a variance or, a relief provided as part of the site plan approval process? And then there was also a question regarding the buffers between the property lines shall be landscaped. Does that mean that you could have 10 foot less the 4 foot for the this setback of the 4 feet? So you could have a 6 foot landscape area in theory. So just trying to make sure that we're in clarity, because as you can probably imagine, trying to read it off the fly and being held to, whatever we said in that form. I just wanted to make sure that we were all in agreement in terms of how it would actually be interpreted by this board, such that if we do get asked that question again, you give a more definitive answer than what was provided last night. So with that being said, when I read the language, seemed to me as if it read that the surfaced area for your parking, your parking space, which we have dimensional regulations on, says that it has to be a minimum of the 4 feet off of the build, you have to be 4 feet off of the minimum area, but the 10-foot setback is related to the building structure, not the landscaping per se. And so that you would have, 10 feet off of the building line. But if you had a parking space, then the parking space by definitionally will be wide enough that it would meet that 10 feet. So this really would be applicable really for a walkway between a parking space and the property line, and that the buffers between the property lines and the parking areas, if there is no buffer between the parking area plus the 4 feet, that means that the landscaping would potentially be there, there'd be a zero lot, there's zero space for landscaping. And that's the thing I wanted to double check if people agree that I'm reading that correctly.
Yeah, so the edge, the edge of the parking area can't be less than 4 feet from the lot lines. And landscape buffers are required. Oh, buffers shall include landscaping or walkways. Got it. All right. It sounds like we understand now. Sounds like a good best practice that might come up for design review would be landscape buffers wherever possible.
Is it the matter that we just need to define what landscape buffers is somewhere else? I've seen a lot of, like, is there number 7? Is it like landscape buffers defined? Or is that what's missing from this, Jim, do you think, from last, and Erin, Theo? It seems like that was one of the biggest variables.
So the definition for buffer strip in the zoning is a strip of land intended to buffer uses on one lot from uses on an adjoining lot. Such strips shall include natural or planted vegetation sufficient to provide a visual and noise buffer satisfactory to the reviewing authority.
Okay.
So that's covered already in our definition. Calls it
So
buffer.
that's great. So this
Buffers.
is named, sorry, Aaron, thanks. So this buffer falls into that category then. So that's the definition that we want to pull from. Meaning it would be the planning board that would review and approve what the landscape buffer would be. I think I just want to make sure tonight, and before we get into the public hearing, that we're on the same page. We understand what it is.
So there you could have a buffer that is between the parking space and the building that could either be landscaping or a walkway between, you know, the actual parking and the building of the development. And then between the parking area and the lot line, you have to have 4 feet of non-surfaced area, which would have some sort of landscaping buffer as a requirement. So you could theoretically have a parking space and then a 4-foot area, and that would be the bare minimum requirement for compliance.
So you'd never have a walkway between the parking and the lot line. Between the edge of the parking, that's farthest from the building. Do you know what I mean?
You could, but you wouldn't have to, which is the nuance.
And you could try it, but then the reviewing authority, which would be the planning board, would say, I don't think you're intending to use that as a walkway. You're just extending your parking, so that should be a landscape buffer. So again,
Okay.
you know, the board would have some justification in saying, no, you're not going to put a walkway there. It's got to be landscaping.
Okay.
I guess I'm a little, I had to change devices. I don't know what and I didn't watch what was going on with what the confusion was, but it seems pretty clear to me, but I don't know how the questioning went.
Yeah. I think the main clarification was Jim's, that the setback applies to the building. So because people were doing the math, 10 minus 4 or 10. So I don't know, Jim, what you were going to say.
Yeah, I think Matt, just trying to get into the minutia of it on the fly. We're trying to make sure that we were communicating correctly to the town council. And so I just wanted to double check with the board that 10-foot setback and this buffer are not necessarily the same, because the 10-foot setback would be applicable to the building structure itself. This is just specifically setting the limit, the minimum limit for the parking space to the lot line. So just want to make sure that we're on the same page, because I would anticipate that I'm going to get the same, I would anticipate that we are going to get the same question from town council members next time. And I just want to be able to have that conversation with this other members of the board who, to your point, you said you can read it. You think it's relatively clear. When I was trying to read it on the fly yesterday, I was kind of tripping over myself, trying to make sure I actually was interpreting it correctly and not misstating and misrepresenting anything to town council.
Okay. So to me, the setback would be from the lot line to the building, and the buffer would be to the parking edge. So what this effectively would do is, if you had a building setback at 10 feet, it would be impossible to put a parking space between the building and the lot line at 10 feet, because you would not have that 4-foot buffer. So I think that's what was intended, is to make sure people aren't jamming in parking spaces all over the place without proper, clearance and thought. And I think this does that. And I can understand how when someone throws something at you pretty quick, it is hard to think on the fly. So I get it. Like, it happens to me all the time.
Yeah. So I think honestly, if we had just said exactly what you just said, then I think it would have been we would have fully addressed the comment and made it go away. So thank you for helping me and the rest of the team.
All right.
That's good. That's all I was hoping for tonight. I just wanted to make sure it was just clarified. So that's yeah.
And was that the big or one of the big issues, or whether besides the roof deck, was there anything else that is, going to pose a problem?
I think in general, one of the main, so those were in terms of the actual material of the bylaw, text. I think those were probably the biggest ones. There was a significant pushback from select members of the town council related to the approach of going with the map as presented in lieu of a smaller map, as well as there was a critique as it relates to the public comment, public engagement process. Basically saying that the members, I would say a certain number of members of the town council indicated that they did not feel as if that the working group and the planning board adequately responded to the feedback provided by members of the public during the public engagement process. I think those would be the takeaways. We really only got meaningful feedback from, I would say, probably 3 of the members of the town council, and then one member indicated that he was going to be providing additional comment via alternative means, either at the public hearing or potentially discussed as a letter prior to the meeting. He had some questions specifically related. He didn't get into it because he it feels an appropriate manner, but he felt as if I believe height was one of them, and clarifications how the bylaw work around height and setbacks.
Right. Yeah, that's a good summary. So,
And can I just ask a stupid question? How many of these town councils participated in any of our workshops?
So
You don't have to answer that. It's
yeah.
kind of redundant. So,
Yep.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think we can anticipate that they will participate in the public hearings. So,
And just to comment on that, Matt,
that'll
I
be
felt the
welcome.
same way. Oh, sorry, Theo. I thought you were done.
No.
I felt the same way. I was starting to heat up as I was watching. But maybe they watched the video after, and that's something that we can't account for. Even though they weren't there in person, I think I don't know if they went back and watched the video. So
And heard from constituents was something else that was brought up a few times.
right.
Yeah, I mean, as feedback goes, it's certainly all feedback is constructive in one lens, in one frame. So and we are proceeding, and it's we're able to take the next positive steps to walk through the process. And as Matt said, and I think, and as we all feel, like, very committed to a fully transparent public engagement process. We want to hear from all, everyone in Wakefield who wants to engage on the issue. So, any other discussion around moving forward on 3A in our public process? I will again thank Jim and Aaron and the whole working group for what continues to be a a difficult process to walk through and a very technical process to walk through. And it again is really hard to convey how technical it is, the model and all of the everything that goes into it, especially through a remote setting where you cannot walk people through the model or really get into a typical, or an example of a lot and how the setbacks work and the buffers and all of that. It really is rife for so, misunderstanding, mishearing, and that does feed frustration. So we'll find ways to make that as accessible as possible. So, our next agenda item, I've lost my notes in my agenda. Item 6, our future agenda items. I think it continues to be the sort of the known items as we continue to move forward. Following up on the bylaw review, the rules and regs, MBTA, and other items. Are there any other sort of new or other topics we want to just continue to be mindful of as we build the agendas? Okay. All right. And if we need to, we will consider some additional meetings between now and March 18th, if we have to. March 18th being sort of the final drop dead date for a full recommendation by the planning board, whether or not to proceed with sponsorship of the item to the town meeting for the warrant. Okay. Item 7 are discussion items not anticipated by the chair. So happy to open it up to all of y'all and Aaron. So. Okay. I don't have anything. So we certainly have enough on our plates. So
Agreed.
yeah, and in truth, these are the issues we want to be addressing, and we want to be helping to lead public discussion and consideration around, because we're hoping to help people think not just about immediate needs, but about all the long-term interconnected issues around housing, transportation, economic development, and livability. So, all right. Well, since there don't seem to be any other items for discussion tonight, I will entertain a round of applause for our working group and all members of the planning board, and a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Bill.
Second.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, all in favor? Matt?
Yes.
All right, Jim?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So terrific. I'm sure we'll be in touch, and certainly look forward to seeing everyone on February 13th. So